The story of a little big man, small in stature and a titan when it came to scholastics. No high school degree, bachelor's degree, and no doctorate's degree. But he held the position of the chairman of Hunter College, Afro Studies and Puerto Rican Studies, from I believe 69 to 86. He also was congratulated and asked to come to Cornell University to speak and give classes. His name is Henrik Clarke, Dr. Henrik Clarke. And our people perish from a lack of knowledge. A friend of mine said, you want to scare some of our people? Just ask them to read a book. Now that's sad, because I heard a European said that if you don't want African people to know something, put it in a book. But they're talking about people that are unlearned people, people that have not even learned how to read. And they've taken the information that they have been taught or they have in their mind, they're taking it from TV, the internet, and from their masters. But I don't want to go on too much in that. But I do want to say that he was influenced by Cheikh Anta Diop. And if you don't know who he is, I don't have time to tell you. He also met with Malcolm X for coffee on not several, but many, many, many occasions. And I'm quite sure that he influenced Malcolm in some of his things. Now, the image we dare to see is going to be the title of this. But all it's talking about is, why don't we dare to see ourselves as presidents, legislators, and so forth? And you know why that is. You got a chip in your brain. You were told that you couldn't read at some point in time, and that must have actually clicked somewhere in your head, most of you, because you don't want to read anymore. There's a quiet but powerful truth at the center of this story, a truth that has echoed across generations, across classrooms, across churches, and across nations. It is not really about a painting. It is not even about a single act of defiance. It is about something deeper. Who we are allowed to see ourselves as, and who the world permits us to be. At its core, this story is about a simple but revolutionary idea. People create God in their own image, and people decides whose image is accepted. The only one that seeks, sometimes more than any other class of people, to paint their gods another color would be the African. And he was made to do it at one time, threatened, killed, lynched, burned. But now we do not have an excuse. We want to be like someone else. But for centuries, humanity has shaped its understanding of greatness, divinity, worth through images. These images are not neutral. They are taught, reinforced, protected, and when necessary, defended with force. social, political, and psychological. So when someone dares to challenge those images, it is never treated as harmless. It is treated as dangerous because images shape identity, belief, and shapes power. The actor at the center of this story is simple. A young mind imagines the divine in a way that reflects its own experience, its own history, its own sense of truth. There is no hatred in this act, no rebellion for rebellion's sake, only honesty, only imagination, only the natural instinct to see oneself reflected in what is sacred. And yet that act becomes and shakes the room. Why? Because it exposes something that has long been hidden in plain sight. The idea that only one image has been allowed to define holiness, goodness, and authority. And when that monopoly is changed or challenged, even by a child, it reveals how fragile it really is. The reaction to this moment tells us everything we need to know about the act itself, but about the system surrounding it, very little. See, there's discomfort, tension, and anger when this happens. These are not responses to a painting. These are responses to a threat to a long-standing narrative about who holds power to define truth. And that is where the real conflict lies. This is not a story about race. It's a story about control over knowledge, identity, and imagination. Because if a people begin to see themselves differently, they begin to recognize their own worth, they begin to question the images that they have been given. The entire structure built on their limitations begin to crack. This is moral. The greatest threat to oppression is not violence, it's awareness. The moment people begin to think for themselves, truly think, they become dangerous to systems that depend on their silence. And that is why the response in this story is so severe, not because a rule was broken, but because a boundary was crossed, an invisible line that said, this is how far you can go. This is what you can believe. This is how you can see yourself. And once that line is crossed, it cannot be uncrossed. What makes this moment even more powerful is that it is supported, encouraged, and someone willing to stand in truth, even at personal cost. That act of support is just as important as the original act of creation because it's courageous and contagious. And one person dares to see differently, it opens the door for every other person to see differently, have a different path, a different vision. And suddenly what once seemed impossible becomes undeniable. The consequences following are not surprising. History has shown us time and time again what happens to those who challenge dominant narratives. They are silenced, removed, replaced, not because they are wrong, because they are disruptive. But here is the deepest truth. Being forced out is not the same as losing. In fact, in stories like this and in history itself, those who stand on truth often walk away not defeated but elevated, not broken but affirmed. Because victory is not always measured by position. Sometimes it's measured by impact. The impact is clear. A seed has been planted, a question has been asked, boundary has been challenged. And once that happens, nothing remains the same. Now let's bring it forward because this is not a story of the past. This is a story about today. We still live in a world where images shape reality, where presentation influences identity, where systems still attempt to define who gets to be seen as powerful, intelligent, beautiful, worthy. And I will tell you, because I don't have enough time to say everything in this, this is behind the painting of a young black boy painting Jesus as black and going to a black school, but having a white overseer over all the schools. And when he sees this, all of a sudden, Jesus becomes a nigger, okay? And all of a sudden, the principal gets fired. All of a sudden, everything changes. Because you see, now what was supposed to be a white Jesus in the eyes of a young man, became a black Jesus.